It's 3:12 in the morning in Beijing. In a dim operations room, a row of officers sits in front of glowing screens. One of them leans closer, frowns, and zooms in. On the map, a tiny island just north of Taiwan lights up with new radar signatures. Japan has quietly moved missile launchers there. Not on the mainland, not on American soil. On Japan's own territory. The officer exhales and says a sentence that would have sounded insane 50 years ago. Japan has stepped out of line. At the same time, on the other side of the East China Sea, a Japanese fisherman wakes up, checks the weather, and hears a headline on the radio. Rising tensions, Chinese warnings, talk of a painful price if Japan ever dares to get involved in a conflict over Taiwan. For most of the world, Japan is the country of anime, sushi, vending machines, and calm, polite people who say sorry even when you step on their foot. A peaceful nation. A country with a pacifist constitution that supposedly can't go to war. But inside military briefings in Beijing, Washington, and Tokyo, that's not how Japan looks at all. Tonight, we're going to pull back the curtain. Because Japan's so-called pacifist military is not what China thinks it is, and it's not what you've been told either. Stay with me. If you watch a lot of YouTube, you'll see two popular stories about Japan's military. Story number one goes like this. Japan is gentle. Japan is peaceful. Japan has Article 9 in its constitution that bans war. Japan can't really fight even if it wants to. It's basically defenseless, hiding behind America. Story number two is the complete opposite. Japan is secretly rearming. Japan is about to shock China with hidden power. Japan is one step away from becoming the terrifying empire it once was. Both stories make great thumbnails. Both stories are wrong. The truth about Japan's self-defense forces sits in a much more uncomfortable middle zone. Stronger than the soft anime nation stereotype, but also far more limited, cautious, and nervous than the scary Japan is back narrative. To understand why China pays so much attention to Japan's every move, we have to start with a simple question. How did Japan become pacifist in the first place? After World War II, much of Japan lay in ruins. Cities were burned. Millions were dead. The country had gone from imperial power to occupied nation in a few short years. Under American occupation, Japan wrote a new constitution. In it sits the famous Article 9. It says Japan renounces war. It renounces the threat or use of force as a means of settling international disputes. In plain language, Japan promised the world, we will never do that again. On paper, it sounds absolute. No war, no army, no military. But reality did not wait politely. The Cold War arrived. The Soviet Union grew more aggressive. The Korean War broke out. The United States suddenly needed Japan not just as a defeated enemy, but as a partner in a dangerous region. So a compromise was born. Japan would not have an army, it would have self-defense forces. Not war, just self-defense. No military aggression, only protecting our territory. The uniforms look like soldiers, the ships look like warships, the planes look like fighter jets. But the name, Self-Defense Forces, tells you everything about the legal tightrope Japan has been walking for decades. From the beginning, Japan's pacifism was written with small print. Fast forward to today, and the quiet island nation turns out to be anything but defenseless. Japan now has one of the most advanced navies in the world. Its destroyers carry powerful radar systems and interceptor missiles. Its submarines are modern, silent, and very hard to track. Its air force flies high-end fighters, trains constantly with American pilots, and practices defending the skies over the Western Pacific. On land, Japan's ground forces are not designed to invade other countries. They are built to protect long chains of islands, ports, and critical sea lanes. They train for scenarios where missiles rain down, ships approach from the horizon, and drones buzz overhead. Japan's military doesn't rely on mass. It relies on quality. While China has more ships and more soldiers, Japan invests in highly trained crews, integrated systems, and deep coordination with the United States. And that partnership is the second piece of the puzzle. Across Japan, American bases dot the map. Airfields, ports, logistics hubs. U.S. Marines train in the forests and along the beaches. U.S. Navy ships come and go, U.S. bombers visit. Intelligence flows both ways. On paper, Japan is self-defense only. In practice, it sits at the center of a huge, tightly linked alliance network. From Beijing's perspective, that matters more than any word written in a constitution. Now here is where the story changes in a way most people outside Japan missed. For decades, Japan kept its defense budget around 1% of its economy. Politicians proudly pointed to that number. Look, they said, we are not a military power. We spend less than NATO countries. That era is over. In recent years, Japanese leaders have approved a dramatic shift in security policy. Japan published a new national security strategy that openly talks about strengthening its ability to strike back if attacked. The government plans to raise defense spending up to 2% of GDP, putting Japan among the top military spenders in the world. Suddenly, this pacifist country is buying and developing long-range missiles that can hit enemy bases far from Japanese shores if those bases are involved in attacks on Japan. It is investing more in cyber defense, space, electronic warfare, and ammunition stockpiles. It is reinforcing its southwestern islands, exactly where any conflict over Taiwan or disputed waters would hit first. Legally, Japan still cannot launch a pure offensive war. Practically, it is building the tools to hit back hard if someone crosses its red lines. For China, watching from across the East China Sea, these are not small adjustments inside a peaceful neighbor. They look like a slow but steady escape from the cage of post-war limits. To really see why this scares strategists in Beijing, you need to picture the map from above. Imagine you're looking down on East Asia at night. To the west, the dark shape of China's coastline. To the east, a long curving chain of islands, Kyushu, Okinawa, Miyako, Ishigaki, and tiny Yonaguni, almost close enough to Taiwan to see it on a clear day. This line of islands is part of what military planners call the first island chain. In simple terms, it is a natural barrier. Any Chinese ship or plane trying to push out into the deeper Pacific has to weave around or through this line. Now imagine those islands not as quiet holiday destinations, but as a necklace of sensors and launchers, radars scanning the sky, anti-ship missiles pointing at the sea, air bases ready to launch fighters. Some of this already exists. More is being added. Every time Japan builds a new base, deploys a new radar, or stations troops on a previously quiet island, Chinese planners draw red circles on their maps. In a crisis over Taiwan or over disputed islands in the East China Sea, those outposts could help shut down Chinese movement and give US and Japanese forces early warning and firepower. So when Japan stations missile units on remote southwestern islands, China doesn't see a peaceful country cautiously defending itself. It sees a wall that Beijing would have to break through, quickly and violently, if it ever wanted to control the seas around Taiwan or push its navy into the broader Pacific. This is why Chinese officials speak so sharply whenever Japan even hints it might get involved in a Taiwan conflict. They warn that Japan will pay a painful price if it interferes. State media runs commentaries about Japan returning to militarism. Old wounds from the 1930s and 1940s, invaded cities, atrocities, humiliation, are pulled back up and shown to the public again. Some of this is genuine fear. Some of it is political theater. Inside China, memories of Japanese imperial aggression are real and raw. Any Japanese move that looks like rearmament is easy to paint as a dangerous return to the past. That narrative helps the Chinese government rally support, justify its own military buildup, and pressure Japan diplomatically. But underneath the emotions and propaganda, you can still see the cold logic. A richer, high-tech Japan, spending more on defense, tightly tied to the United States, sitting on a line of islands near Taiwan and key sea routes. That is a serious strategic headache. It is a problem China cannot ignore. So is Japan now the unstoppable powerhouse that some videos shout about? Not exactly, because there is another part of the story that gets far less attention. For all the dramatic shifts, Japan still operates inside strict legal and political limits. Its constitution has not been rewritten. Instead, governments over the years have reinterpreted it, step by step, to allow more cooperation with allies and more flexible self-defense. Each time, that reinterpretation has been controversial. Each time, lawyers, scholars, and citizens have argued about how far is too far. Japan can prepare to strike back if under attack, but it cannot legally decide to launch a war of choice. Its forces have trained, peace-kept, and supported allies, but there is still deep caution about offensive operations. Much of the Japanese public supports stronger defense now, especially as they watch China rise, missiles fly over nearby waters, and North Korea test more weapons. But public support is not a blank check. Memories of what Japan itself did in Asia in the last century still influence how people think. Then there are practical problems. Japan's population is aging fast. Recruiting and retaining enough young people for the self-defense forces is a growing challenge. Big defense projects cost money that also has to cover pensions, healthcare, and social services. Building new bases in rural or remote areas often faces local resistance, not because people love China, but because they don't want their hometown to become a target. So yes, Japan is stronger than many people outside the region think. Yes, it is slowly stepping out of its old post-war shell. But no, it is not free from constraints, doubts, or weaknesses. The truth sits somewhere between helpless pacifist and reborn empire. Now, let's take all of this and put it into one of the scariest questions of our time. What happens if a crisis explodes over Taiwan? Picture this. Tensions rise, statements get sharper, military planes fly closer. Then, one day, something crosses the line. A blockade. A missile test that isn't just a test. An invasion. The world's attention snaps to Taiwan. The United States has long kept its language strategically ambiguous, but everyone knows it is deeply committed to Taiwan's security. If fighting starts, American ships, submarines, and planes would surge into the region. Where do they launch from? Where do they refuel, reload, and repair? Where do they base many of their forces in peacetime? Japan. Japanese airfields and ports would become crucial hubs for any American response, whether Japan likes it or not. Early missile defense, intelligence sharing, anti-submarine patrols, all of that would probably involve Japanese territory and Japanese forces. Even if Japan tried to stay out of direct combat, its land would almost instantly become part of the battlefield in Chinese eyes. So what does Japan do? Does it limit itself to defending only its own territory and sea lanes? Does it allow US forces to operate fully from bases in Japan, knowing that this makes those bases targets for Chinese missiles? If Japanese islands are attacked, does Japan then use its new counter-strike capabilities against launch sites on the Chinese mainland? These are not abstract legal questions. They are life and death decisions that Japanese leaders may one day have to make under terrible pressure. And it is this combination, Japan's location, Japan's alliance with the US, and Japan's growing military capacity, that makes Chinese planners nervous. Not because Japan will wake up one day and decide to attack China on its own, but because in a US-China showdown, Japan is the hinge. If it stays passive, America's job is much harder. If it joins in, China faces a wall of islands, radars, missiles, and bases right off its coast. So when you see thumbnails screaming that Japan's military power terrifies China, remember this. China is not terrified in the way a horror movie villain is scared of a hero. It is wary of a neighbor with painful shared history, rapidly improving defenses, and a deep alliance with its main global rival. Japan is not the helpless cartoon country some people imagine. But Japan is also not the unstoppable monster that other videos sell for clicks. It is a cautious, legally constrained, but increasingly capable military power sitting right on the fault line between America and China. And behind all the talk of missiles and fleets are millions of ordinary people. People in Japan who fear being dragged into a war they didn't start. People in China who were raised on stories of Japanese invasion and now see headlines about Japanese rearmament. People in Taiwan who worry about becoming the next Ukraine, or worse, fishermen, factory workers, students, parents, soldiers who didn't choose the big strategy games above their heads. The truth is, everyone involved is afraid of something. China is afraid of encirclement and humiliation. Japan is afraid of abandonment and destruction. The United States is afraid of losing its influence and the stability of the region. And the rest of us are afraid that one miscalculation in this crowded, tense corner of the world could change our century forever. So, what do you think? Should Japan stay strictly pacifist and refuse any role beyond defending its own shores? Should it go even further, become a normal military power and match China more aggressively? Or is the current uncomfortable middle, legally cautious but steadily stronger, the only realistic path in a dangerous neighborhood? Tell me in the comments where you stand and why. If you found this breakdown helpful, and you want more videos that go beyond the fear-based thumbnails and actually explain what's happening behind closed doors in Tokyo, Beijing, and Washington, make sure you subscribe, turn on all notifications, and share this video with someone who still thinks Japan is just a peaceful anime nation that can't fight.